So today I'm going to show you how to fit Outback Armour assembled struts to your Triton. So what we're going to do is we're going to remove the upper bump stop from the upper control arm to allow full upper control arm movement so that we can get that strut out a lot easier. So using your trusty 12mm spanner, slide on under and undo that. This is the upper bump stop that we actually removed from this Triton. So what we're going to do is actually replace it with a shortened bump stop. What this bump stop primarily does is stop the upper control arms from going too low. So what we're going to do is we remove it beforehand so that we get full movement out of that upper control arm. Makes it a lot easier to get the strut in and out. So what we do from here is we actually undo all of the brake lines and so forth on the underside of the upper control arm. We undo the sway bar link at the bottom. Undoing the brake lines off the stub axle here, just getting everything as loose as possible. If need be, undoing the clip off of this brake line as well. Once we've removed those, we're going to undo the two bolts that hold the upper control arm into the chassis and then move it out of the way. Undo our bottom bolt from underneath of the strut, and then we're going to undo the top ones. The strut should come straight out. Best thing to do, definitely, undoing that sway bar link and undoing it both sides, moves it out of the way, makes for a much easier removal. We are ready to fit our Outback Armour adjustable struts to this Triton. So before you do any sort of fitment, you want to run over what you're about to fit with the car, whether it's Outback Armour struts, whether it's any other product, any other aftermarket accessory to your car. You want to run over it before you actually fit it to the vehicle. So what I do is I usually take off the top bolts, ready to assemble into the vehicle itself. I'll then go and run them over and put them with the vehicle. So what I also do is double check 100% that the part number on the box is what I'm supposed to be fitting, is what has been ordered, that the vehicle has the accessories on the vehicle for what we're actually fitting into the car. I also run over the whole unit. I'll actually run through the click assembly, make sure that it's all working as it should, and so that it's ready to hop straight into the car. Let's get into it. Right, so we've got the strut into the vehicle, and so the best way of doing any strut into any vehicle, get it in the car, get the top nuts nice and loose on there, but it's holding it in. Then you want to do is actually get the bottom bolt in. Once that is in, you then go and tighten up the top nuts before doing anything else. That gives you a nice strong base between top and bottom before starting to work on the upper control arm. Now we're ready to get the upper control arm on. So with the upper control arm, it goes in and under the spring seat. And if you've got a transmission jack, if you're using a hoist, or if you're at home in your driveway and using a jack, you need that now so that you can jack up the stub axle to get that upper control arm lined up like so. So you want to push the arms in and up. Using the jack, being very careful obviously that you're jacking on suspension of a vehicle that is on stands or on a hoist. And then once we've got those bolts through, letting it back down, pulling that out of the way, allowing you to work on that vehicle properly. Now, what we're also going to do is obviously put in our ABS bracket that goes on the back of the bracket of the strut, aligned with the bracket to actually line all that wiring up. We're going to slide that onto there, slide it down, push it down, and then we're going to bolt that up there, just like I bought one. So one of the biggest phone calls we get and questions that we get when someone's fitting a Triton kit is when they get to this stage, they look at that and think that the upper control arm, because of where it's sitting, is going to make contact with the spring and with the spring seat. Now, with the way that the geometry of the front end works, as this actually goes up, it actually moves away from the strut. So this gap actually opens up, so there'll be no issue whatsoever. The one thing to also remember is that the upper control arm bolts to the chassis, which are these two up here, that you don't do them any more up than sort of hand tight when you're putting the suspension back together until the vehicle gets back on the ground and the suspension is settled. So you've moved the car backwards and forwards a bit and get the suspension in the right frame of mind, in the right spot. Then you can go through and you tighten all those up because they are a solid bush there, and also the bottom of the strut down here, that you want to make sure that they are not bound up at the wrong spot. So that you want it so that in a relaxed state, that's where they're getting tightened up, because if they're not, Then at the relaxed state, well, in the state where the car is relaxed, the bushes aren't and they're twisted, and it causes premature foaming. Taking the vehicle for a quick test drive over some speed bumps and making sure that that suspension has got to move and settle down. So what we're going to do now is actually go through, tighten up the upper control arm bolts and also the bottom strut bolt. Make sure they're nice and tight because the bushes are now in that relaxed state. What we're also going to do is put the bump stop back in. So this is the original one that we took off the vehicle, which is the factory normal bump stop. We're actually going to replace it with a nice small one, which gives that little bit of extra movement. These bump stops, what they do is actually stop the strut from going too far. They make sure the CVs stay nice and safe and they're not overextended. So we still have that within the shortened one, but it creates that extra movement, makes it nice and safe. So we'll get these on. Let's go for a test drive afterwards, make sure everything is how it should be. Today we've run you through on how to fit an Outback Armour suspension or the front suspension to a Triton. Run through the important points of removing the bump stop beforehand and then also not putting it onto the very end. When fitting, that the upper control arm goes underneath the spring seat, and removing it by the bolts that attach the upper control arm to the chassis, not by the ball joint itself. Making sure everything's nice and tight at the end, not doing up the upper control arm bolts and also the strut bolt tool back on the ground, and everything's been run in and settled at the right height. So we've done all that, it's all fitted in, she's looking great, let's take it for a drive. So final test drive of this vehicle, it's riding really nice, a little bit more tweaking with the adjustable shocks, which is the beauty of them. So rather than what I like and how I like to set a vehicle up, they're going to be able to set it up the way that they like it, and I think they're going to be really impressed.